So where are you born? Your parents are... You have a father and a mother?
Yes, I do. She lives in a town called Leicester in the middle of England. And she's a very nice woman.
Yeah. And did your parents recognize you as a person that had, you know, creative talent when you were a child?
They were nice to me. I think they were quite disappointed that I became an artist. But they've changed their minds in more recent years on account of me being rich and famous.
Okay.
But then again, in retrospect, they probably weren't very happy that I went to art school, studied art, because I was the only person in my entire extended family who ever got a degree. So I was the pinnacle of academic achievement in my entire extended family, all the Shrigleys and all the other side of the family. I was the one. I was, you know, like an intellectual heavyweight of the family.
Yeah.
Yet I actually went to art school. You get your qualification from art school simply by turning up. You can actually not show up and still get a qualification.
Before you attend art school, you don't consider yourself an artist?
No, well, I should clarify. I went to art school in 1987 and graduated in 91. And at that time, there was no precedent for having, for being a fine artist. That wasn't a career opportunity that I was aware of. A revolution where young artists became successful and became noteworthy, and the art market, as we know it now, came into being. And there was this new career that suddenly I had. There was always a moment when you leave art school, and some of you here will have been to art school, where you're at a party, for example, and people say, "What do you do?" And at parties now, with most people here are kind of older and have jobs and stuff, you say, "I'm a middle management TV executive." But when you've been to art school, you answer that question by saying, "I was at art school, and now I've got a job in a delicatessen."
Where did you have a job then?
I actually had a job in an art gallery. I was a gallery guide, so I was basically doing what I'm doing now, as in sitting in the corner of an art gallery. Except I was paid for it then.
So you so you had to protect other artists' work in the gallery?
Yeah, so the dialogue...
What kind of gallery? Like?
Well, you know, just the contemporary art galleries, the Centre for Contemporary Arts in Glasgow, and it was much like this. So somebody would walk in, a Glaswegian person would walk in, and they'd say, "Excuse me, wait the fuck is this shite?" And you'd say, "This is an exhibition of David Shrigley, who is the popular contemporary artist from the United Kingdom, and he's made these inflatable swans, which, in my opinion, possibly not in yours, says something about something or other, and I think it's quite interesting, and if you'd like to take a leaflet, it'll give you some more information."
But did you have to sit there for, you know...
For 4 hours.
Okay. Did you have a uniform?
Yes.
How did the...
I had a sweatshirt with the name of the institution on it. It said CCA. And it was quite strange in a way, because it was the logo of the gallery, it was outside, and people, often, half the time, people would say, "Is this your artwork?" And I'd say, "No, I just work here," and then I'd just sort of point at the logo on my sweatshirt. I actually used to be a gallery guide with Jonathan Monk, who's quite a famous artist from the gallery here, and an old friend of mine. So Jonathan and I, which is probably terrible gallery guides actually. I remember once we had a Tony Cragg exhibition, and I think me and Jonathan Jonathan rolled a joint and went and smoked it in the toilet in the days when you were allowed to do things. Well, you weren't ever allowed to do that, actually. But and then maybe I shouldn't tell you this story. You can imagine.
we are in a circle of trust.
Well, it's being filmed, so that's why. Imprudent. Indiscretion is my middle name. Anyway, suffice to say, Tony Cragg sculptures have a resonant quality, both literally and metaphorically, and we utilised the resonance of the Tony Cragg sculptures for our own amusement by shouting into them and listening to the sounds, and then lying on the floor laughing. And we were lucky not to get fired. But the thing was, Tony Cragg was not, contemporary art at that time was not that popular on weekdays in Glasgow. You remember.
But imagine being stoned with these swans.
Absolutely do not advocate drug use.
No.
If you're working in an art gallery.
No.
As particularly where my work is showing.
But sitting there in the world of art, protecting other people's artwork, did you have any, self-confidence to call yourself an artist at that point?
Well, I think there's a watershed moment where you stop saying, when you have that conversation I've just described about being at a party and what do you do, where you say, I'm an artist. And then some people feel like, that is in some way, I don't know, a conceited thing to say, or an arrogant thing to say, or a very self-important thing to say. But I think there's a point where you write the word fine artist on your tax return, and then you are legally obliged to respond to that question with, I am an artist. I believe that is because anything else would be deceptive. So I wrote that on my tax return in 1995, maybe, and then I was, fine artist.
But did your mother and father, did they know that you called yourself a fine artist at that point?
No, they realized that I was, we had this conversation. I remember having a conversation with my mother. Maybe this was long.
Interesting, it's your mother.
Yes. If you'd met my mother and my father, you'd know why I was having the conversation with my mother. But anyway, that aside, my mother said, where have you been? Where were you last week when I called? And I said, I was actually in Copenhagen. And she said, what were you doing in Copenhagen? And I said, I was having an exhibition. And she said, oh, whoa. Why? And I said, I was having an exhibition of drawings at Galleri Nicolai Wallner. And then she said, why? And I said, because I'm an artist. I kind of thought you knew I was an artist. And she said, yeah, but I didn't realize that was a thing, And then she said, and said, well, what's the thing with the exhibition? What happens at the exhibition? I said, the purpose of the exhibition, it's a commercial art gallery, and Nicolai Wallner and his colleagues, they sell the artwork. People buy the drawings. She said, what? Hold on a minute. They buy the drawings? What, those drawings that I've seen? Yes. And then she said, why? I said, what, why do they buy the drawings? I said, yeah, why do they buy the drawings? And I said, I don't know, you need to ask them. Presumably they like them and they feel that the price is appropriate to the whatever it is that I've made, and that they wish to have them in their homes. And she said, phew. So then it all changed in 2003 when I was, they made a documentary film about me on Channel 4, which is one of the terrestrial channels in the UK. And they made this documentary about me and my work, and my parents saw it, And suddenly, overnight, they understood everything about contemporary art. They understood my place in the world of contemporary art, and it was all fine, and I never had to justify myself ever again. And suddenly, not only that, they were really proud of me.
Sounds like a great documentary.
It's TV, and you know all about that, right?
Yeah, it has a strong power.
Yeah.
And in that documentary, they follow you around, or they...
Well, there's another story about the documentary, which is kind of a bit, I don't know, which is a bit strange, because I don't feel very comfortable about being the center of attention. You know, it's just sort of not my thing. And anyway, she said, okay, how about this? Right, we'll pretend that you're like anonymous, and we'll just make a film about you where you're not in it, and you're just like this Banksy type character, although Banksy wasn't who he is. You know, he wasn't a celebrity in those days, an anonymous international celebrity. So I was kind of Banksy before Banksy was Banksy in a way. So anyway, they made this film where somebody pretended to be me, but they weren't actually speaking. They were just sort of in the background, and it was actually a friend of mine, and it was quite strange. And my assistant was sort of pretending that I was this anonymous character, but I wasn't. I just didn't like the idea of being on the TV show. But the really weird thing was, an annoying thing and quite unprofessional thing from the point of view of myself and this woman who made the TV show, was that I then changed my mind about 6 months later and decided that it was just too much hassle to be anonymous. So I just started being on TV. So that was a bit weird, but and now I feel it's just easier just to go with it, you know, hide in plain sight. That's what I'm doing, and I'm still sort of friends with Banksy, or acquainted with Banksy at least. And his life just seems like a nightmare. So I think, in a way, I've made the right choice, hiding in plain sight, if you know what I mean.
But you wake up in the morning.
I do, yes.
Yes, and I know that you produce a lot of drawings, and you don't judge them. But then later on, how do you produce your work on a regular day?
Well, given the person that I live with is actually here, I better give a truthful response, I suppose. I start at 10 o'clock. That's when my assistant arrives, so I sort of have to be there. Yeah. So yeah, I'm washed and dressed, and I've had coffee, and it's 10 o'clock, and then I start work at 10 o'clock, and then I finish at 6 o'clock, because that's when the assistant goes home. And in between 10 and 6, I do what I need to do. I've been doing it for a long time. I've been doing it for 25 years, almost, as a professional. Yeah, you kind of find a way to make what you need to make, and the reality is, there's not really any mystery to it at all. You just spend time covering a certain number of pieces of paper with your splurge, and somehow that seems to work.
But 12 years ago, you told me that you produce maybe 30 drawings a day?
I have an assistant now, I do more.
But you still do that?
Yeah, it's the same deal.
So when the days you produce, for example, 30 drawings, and it's just like producing and not judging on the quality of the drawings?
Yes, pretty much. And avoid the thought that this is work for an exhibition or for a book or whatever it is. I just think this is just an activity, and it's 30 sheets of paper or however many it is, and once they're full, once they're complete, that's it. I can go and watch football.
Can you give me an example where you really, really struggle and it doesn't come to you?
I think the struggle just takes place in your mind in a way, and I'm sort of aware of that. So even if you feel it's going really badly, that's just your opinion of it. And also I feel that because I edit the work so heavily, meaning that there might be 20 drawings here or whatever.
And have you ever regretted that a drawing went out that you couldn't make up again?
No.
Never?
Never.
And when does that, censorship take place?
It takes place in the mornings. It's better to make the hard decisions in the mornings because hopefully you've slept well, you've had some coffee, breakfast, and in the mornings.
Before we started, Nicolai told me that you hadn't written on Instagram that you would be here today, because then a lot of people would show up asking for tattoos.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing.
Yeah.
Just, better safe than sorry. It can totally ruin the evening.
It can?
Yeah.
But you know what I remember about it?
What?
I had made some quite bad photocopies of your drawings because the drawings were in a book and I couldn't sit with the book. I wanted them to be like, just a simple piece of work. So I did these photocopies to be shown on television. And at first I was a little afraid that you would, be, angry about me photocopying your work. You didn't mind at all. And then afterwards, a photographer, a very old guy actually, who was really, he had just discovered your work during that session. He came to you and he took one of the photocopies and asked you, could you sign this for me? And I said, now he will, be, because he will be protective about, keeping his real art as an exclusive thing. And it ended up you signed all the photocopies for the technicians and the sound engineer and the light man, and none of them has been sold, on auctions or anything. You know why?
Why?
Because you wrote, "This is a worthless photocopy. Do not sell." David Shrigley. So let's talk about Brexit then.
No.
Your mother and father, did they vote leave or stay?
They voted to remain in the EU because they, like many people in the UK, they just didn't really understand why they were being asked or really what it meant. I don't think that many people really understood. So they said, "Oh, what's it going to mean to you? Do you think it's a bad idea to leave the EU?" And I said, "Yes, it's a bad idea." And my mum said, "Okay, then me and your dad will vote to remain." And that was it. But that tells a story about how utterly, utterly ridiculous the situation is and what a terrible idea Brexit is. But that's all I'm going to say about it.
Yeah. And you want to continue, or you want to... Because I don't have any more questions.